Om Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharyamadhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Rameshwara. Very good. Okay, good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahayi Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahayi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. We're recording okay? Good, thank you. Welcome to you all. Welcome also to our many students taking these classes online. We come today to our final class on the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, it's not the end of studying the Bhagavad Gita. That study goes on for a lifetime, but I'm looking forward to beginning our study of the Bodha Gita next week. I'll introduce it then. I want to apologize again for canceling last week's class at the last moment. Sometimes you know how it is. You wake up and you know you're sick. That happened. So what I would suggest is please make sure you're subscribed to the program announcements on our website, and then check your email before coming on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Also for our online students, if a class hasn't been uploaded, it's probably because either there was minor illness or we'll have weather-related cancellations. For those of you watching from India and warm places, we get a lot of snow here often in winter and ice, and as a result, we sometimes have to cancel classes. Okay, so we will begin today's class reciting the Gita Dhyanam, the first half of the Gita Dhyanam. And as always, as I'm reciting a line, read the translation and then repeat after me. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam. Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina. Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam. Madhye Mahabharatam. Advaitamrita-varshinim Bhagavatim. Advaitamrita-varshinim Bhagavatim. Ashtadashadhyayanim. Ashtadashadhyayanim. Ambatvam-anusandadhami. Ambatvam-anusandadhami. Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshani. Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshani. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe. Namostute Vyasa Pularavindayata Patra Netra. Pularavindayata Patra Netra. Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha. yena tvaya bharata taila purna prajwalito jnanamaya pradipaha prajwalito jnanamaya pradipaha prapanna parijataya prapanna parijataya totra vetraikapanaye totra vetraikapanaye jnanamudraya krishnaya jnanamudraya krishnaya Gita-mrita-duhe namaha Gita-mrita-duhe namaha Sarvo-panishado gavo Sarvo-panishado Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. Together. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum. Very nice. We'll recite the second half at the end of the class if we have time. I'm not sure. So we continue with our review, and we've come up finally to chapter 16, 17, and the final chapter 18. So not that much left. We'll conclude today. The title of chapter 16, Daiva Asura Sampat, Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. Get these long titles. Yoga means chapter title. And this is a chapter in which we do the vibhaga, the separation, the distinction between two kinds of sampat, two collections of qualities. One is the daiva sampat, the qualities of divine, and asura sampat, the qualities of the demonic. And basically, Sri Krishna divides human beings into these two groups, those who have divine qualities and those who have demonic qualities. And please, 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 this twofold distinction is not meant for the sake of labeling other people. After all, Atma is divine within every single person, no matter how obnoxiously or harmfully they might behave. So there is no such thing as a demonic person. There are demonic traits, but even there, to label somebody, oh, he's so demonic, she is so divine, those labels are harmful, because every one of us are a complex combination of both. The most saintly people on the planet have some undesirable traits, and the most vile people on the earth have some good qualities. So let's acknowledge that human nature is a combination of these two. The purpose of this chapter, then, is to identify what are the so-called demonic traits, asura, sampat, and to avoid those for ourselves, not others, for ourselves. And then to identify what are the daiva sampat, the divine traits, and to cultivate them in their lives, again, for oneself. None of us have the right to tell somebody else, you know, you have some demonic qualities. I don't think you would do that. But anyway, don't abuse this chapter in that way. All right. So we'll continue to use the my English translation, which is metrical, so we can chant it like we chant the verses. For the first verse, listen and repeat, and then the remaining verses we will chant together, and we'll stop from time to time to make a few comments. First verse, listen. The blessed Lord said, the blessed Lord said, charity, purity of heart, charity, purity of heart, self-control and simplicity, self-control and simplicity, piety and serenity, piety and serenity, compassion, freedom from desire, compassion, freedom from desire. Together. Courage, patience, and fortitude, modesty and benevolence. O Arjuna, these attributes are known as qualities divine. Arrogance and hypocrisy, vanity and hostility, ignorance and like attitudes are considered demonic traits. Divine traits unto freedom lead, demonic traits to bondage hold. O Arjuna, you need not. You were born with the traits divine. In the world are two kinds of men, the demonic and the divine. Demonic people falsely say, the world is godless and unreal, with minds depraved by such wrong views. They ravage the world with brutal acts, driven by unquenchable greed, and by arrogance, pride, and lust, bound by cravings 100-fold, compelled by hunger and desire. They seek to satisfy their thirst, hoarding wealth gained by unjust means, thinking who is as great as me, led astray by deluded thoughts, ensnared by sensuality, into terrible hells they fall. I cast those loathsome wicked men into demonic wombs again, deluded in birth after birth. They descend to the lowest plane. Threefold are the main gates to hell. Desire, anger, greed are they. Those free from these tamasic traits can strive to reach the highest goal. We'll pause here. A couple more verses left. Threefold are the main gates to hell: kama, desire; krodha, anger; and lobha, greed. The big three. And chosen for obvious reasons. Think when you have made a major blunder in life, what led you to make that mistake? One of these three, right? And maybe we could add the fourth, ignorance, which sometimes we just make mistakes. But when we are motivated by an inner force, these are the motivations: kama, desire; anger, krodha; and lobha, greed, which means these three traits, which everyone has, we should then be careful. We should be self-observant. And an important point about being self-observant: when you observe these three inside of you, that is not a reason to label yourself as being demonic or a bad person. You are a normal person. Normal people have problems, right? Normal people have problems. Which means if you find any of these three in you, congratulations, you're normal. On the other hand, as a sadhaka, as a spiritual practitioner, you want to do whatever you can to minimize these three. Because normal is okay, just okay. It's like when your son or daughter come home with a C on their report card. C is a passing grade, but it's just barely okay. You get the point. Okay. These are the closing verses, which actually these closing verses introduce the next chapter. So we're starting to segue into the next chapter. We'll recite together. But those who scorn the scriptures' rules, heeding their own urges instead, they cannot gain the highest goal, nor perfection nor happiness. Therefore let scripture be your guide for what should and should not be done, knowing the precepts there prescribed. You should act as they so decree. And that's the end of chapter 16. Remember, this English translation is also abridged. So instead of 700 verses, I think it's 300 some, about half of the verses are there. So the next chapter, chapter 17, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. Again, Vibhaga, division. A division of Traya, three kinds of Shraddha, faith. And the threefold division, of course, is in terms of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Tamas, a principle of darkness, ignorance, lethargy. Rajas, a principle of action and passion, and Sattva, a principle of purity and balance. Remember that in ancient times, they looked at the universe in terms of these three gunas. Instead of matter and energy, they understood everything to be the result of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Here, these three are applied in an analysis of Shraddha, faith, but not only Shraddha, that's the title. Then Sri Krishna goes on to talk about three kinds of ahara, food. We start with three kinds of Shraddha, faith, then three kinds of ahara, food, then three kinds of yajna, worship, then three kinds of tapas, penance, austerity, and finally, three kinds of dana, charity. So as we go through, I won't pause, but you'll see. These go one after another, the threefold analysis in terms of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And I will pause before, there's a last section, we'll pause at that point. So let us begin. Notice here, he picks up the last verses of the prior chapter, dealt with scriptures, and that prompts Arjuna to ask this question. Together, Arjuna said, those who worship with faithful hearts, but ignore the scriptural rules, O Krishna, how is their faith based? On sattva, rajas, or tamas? The blessed Lord said, O Arjuna, threefold is faith. According to one's temperament, people are molded by their faith. As they believe, so they become. That last line is a famous line. Yo yat shraddha. Yeah, sa eva saha. Yo yat shraddha. According to a person's shraddha, sa eva saha. Such is the nature of that person. This is said perhaps in every world culture, in different languages, in different ways. I think in English, as you believe, so you become. That's almost an exact translation of this last line. As you believe, so you become. I'm sure Hindi has its own way of saying it. Every language will have its own way of saying it. As you believe, so you become, which shows the incredible importance of our attitude. And definitely the entire Bhagavad Gita goes on, chapter after chapter after chapter, helping us elevate our minds and hearts and have attitudes which are more pure, more conducive to living a life of spiritual growth. And the importance cannot be understated. So, here we have 3 kinds of Shraddha, and next is 3 kinds of Yajna, which will be followed by 3 kinds of Tapas and 3 kinds of Dana. I think Ahara, food, got left out of the translation. We'll chant together. Those who with Sattva are endowed offer their worship to the gods. Those with Rajas to spirits give. Those with tamas to hordes of ghosts. Those who perform harsh penances, driven by ego and desire, torturing their own bodies thus, know them to have demonic traits. Sacrifice, penance, charity are also known of as 3 kinds: Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic. To their distinctions listen now. Sacrifice is called sattvic when performed in scriptural accord, not for the sake of gaining grace, but just because it should be done. Sacrifice is rajasic when offered to gain desired ends, or performed with hypocrisy to appear pious and devout. Sacrifice is tamasic when done despising scriptural rules, lacking mantras, devoid of faith, without offering alms and food. Penances are called sattvic when done not for the sake of results. They are rajasic when performed to gain respect or reverence. Penances are tamasic when delusion casts its wicked spell, and one's own body is abused, or harm to others is the goal. Charity is called sattvic when given at proper time and place to a deserving person who has never given gifts to you. Charity is rajasic when given with hopes of recompense, or for gaining heaven's rewards, or when given reluctantly. Charity is tamasic when given at the wrong time or place, or given to unworthy ones, or when given with disrespect. And that concludes the first part of the chapter, most of the chapter. 3 kinds of Shraddha, 3 kinds of Yajna, sacrifice, 3 kinds of austerity, tapas, and 3 kinds of charity, dana. The last part of the chapter, as you can see, deals with this invocation, Om Tat Sat. We end every class here with Om Tat Sat. The meaning is extremely important. And what Sri Krishna gives here is is the meaning in brief, but also the symbolism, the symbolic meanings of every one of those words. So simple meaning is Om invokes Ishvara Tat, that whatever has been taking place, that is Sat. That is good, that is true, that is real. Sat has all these meanings and more. Good, Sat is good, Sat is true, Sat is real. For our grammarians, Sat is a present participle, existing, being. So just be ready. Words have many meanings. So here, Om Tat Sat is the invocation, and chapter 17 ends with this brief discussion about Om Tat Sat. Together? By the sacred invocation, Om Tat Sat, Om, that is the word. Vedic chanting and sacrifice were thus begun in ancient times. Therefore, Om is recited first, before all acts of sacrifice, or of penance or charity, performed as scriptures so ordain. Sacrifice, penance, charity, without devotion, lacking faith, are worthless and will yield no fruits, not here or in one's future lives. Sacrifice, penance, charity, main topic of this chapter. And with this verse, chapter 17 comes to an end, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga, bringing us finally to the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. And these titles, as you know, are a little bit arbitrarily. Moksha, liberation, certainly the concluding verses of this, excuse me, the concluding verses of this chapter are about Arjuna gaining this wisdom, gaining enlightenment, excuse me. But the chapter opens with Arjuna going back to a question he's actually asked in two different ways in chapter 3 and someplace else. Maybe chapter 5, I don't remember. But he keeps going back to this question of should I renounce the battlefield or should I stay and fight? So this dilemma Arjuna has, and in a spiritual sense, it's the two lifestyles that Sri Krishna talks about. The lifestyle of sannyasa, renouncing conventional worldly activities, and the lifestyle of karma yoga. Now, an important point. I mentioned before that I'll be publishing this coming week a new video on the secret of karma yoga. And there is a secret. You should watch the video later in the week. But one of the points the video makes is something we don't generally think about. Sannyasa is meant for the sake of full-time spiritual practice, obviously. Karma yoga is meant for the sake of full-time spiritual practice. Both equally. And just as sannyasis sometimes miss the mark and are not engaged in full-time spiritual practice in the same way, many non-sannyasis may not be engaged in full-time spiritual practice. That is the purpose of karma yoga. So Arjuna, in the beginning of this chapter, he comes back to that question. I want to know the difference between surrender and renunciation. And not surprisingly, we get back to our favorite topic, or Sri Krishna's favorite topic, karma yoga. Comes one more time. Remember, karma yoga began in chapter 2. Chapter 3 was called karma yoga. Chapter 4 was karma yoga was extensively discussed in chapter 4 and chapter 5, along with renunciation. And here karma yoga comes back again at the end of the text. You can see why karma yoga is clearly the predominant topic of the Bhagavad Gita. So, with that introduction, we can begin chapter 18. Together? Arjuna said, "O Krishna, this I want to know, how to discern the difference between surrender of works fruits and renouncing the worldly life." The blessed Lord said, "To renounce is to cease from works, perform for one's own sake alone. Surrender is to disown the fruits of all deeds as an offering." So here are those two lifestyles. To renounce is to cease from doing things for your own pleasure. That's what a life of sannyasa is. Instead of being engaged in pleasurable activities, you engage in spiritual sadhana practice. On the other hand, the full-time karma yogi, by the way, there's no part-time karma yogi. Karma yoga is full-time. It's meant to be a full-time practice. And having these attitudes full-time. And notice Sri Krishna's definition here. He uses the word surrender, but it ends up meaning karma yoga. Disown the fruits. You are the doer of the action. You do not create the result. Ishvara is karma pala data. So therefore recognize that the results come from Ishvara, therefore your deeds should be dharmic and given as an offering to Ishvara. All of this will be discussed in that video coming out this week. Okay, together? Sacrifice, penance, charity, these works are not to be renounced. They should be done not seeking fruits, but because they have been ordained, renouncing obligated works, thinking wrongly is tamasic, avoiding duties so despised, fearing distress is rajasic, performing actions as enjoined, without attachment to their fruits, deeming them duties to be done. To renounce thus is sattva's view, not avoiding repulsive tasks, nor attached to delightful deeds, giving up the fruits of one's works. Such is a true renunciate. Deluded people take the self to be the agent of all works, but those the wise and egoless are not bound by their deeds and all. Knowledge, knower, and what is known, these impel actions of all kinds, means of action, agent, and act. These factors are involved as well. We'll pause here. He's identified 6 different factors involved in action. Knower, knowledge, what is known, action, agent, and act. All of these factors are involved in everything we do. Sri Krishna goes into a very long, detailed analysis of each of these 6 in terms of sattva, rajas, and tamas. When I did this translation, it struck me as quite technical. So I took the license to omit that section from chapter 18. It doesn't seem to fit with the nature of this translation. It's quite technical. So skipping over that long section, that analysis of action, we come to what really is the concluding portion of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to say that chapter 18 is in 2 parts. The first part is a carryover of what actually started back in chapter 12 with the 3 gunas. And then that 3 guna analysis comes back in 16-17, and then the first half of 18 is an analysis in terms of these three gunas. The last half of the Bhagavad Gita, what to say? It's a conclusion of the entire text, and it's just filled with wonderful, wonderful verses, and that's what we will see now. Together? Those who worship the source of all, pervading the whole universe, by fulfilling duties enjoined, unto perfection they attain, doing one's duties poorly, though surpasses doing others well, performing deeds rightly ordained. No one ever commits a sin. Duty should never be forsworn, even when problems interfere. All deeds entail some obstacles, like a fire enshrouded by smoke. Those free from all attachments here, disciplined and ever content, having ceased from all selfish deeds, they have renounced most perfectly. O Arjuna, now learn from me how one can gain the perfect state, how Brahman is to be obtained. Through this knowledge, the ultimate, those endowed with intelligence, self-controlled and dispassionate, purified and contemplative, in Brahman they are fit to merge. Absorbed in Brahman they attain supreme devotion unto me. Thus they know my reality, and thereafter they enter me. Go for refuge to that alone with your whole heart, O Arjuna. Then being blessed you will attain the state of endless peace supreme. Go for refuge to that alone with your whole heart. You see why karma yoga has to be full-time? With your whole heart. Means spiritual practice. Again, watch the video. Spiritual practice is not something you do for several hours on Saturday morning. If you really get karma yoga, it truly becomes full-time. And you can see by Krishna's own words, anything less than a full-time effort will simply not be sufficient. With your whole heart, he means it. Okay. Thus unto you I have explained, of all knowledge the most concealed. Reflect on this entirely, then go and do whatever you choose. That verse is significant in the story because remember, just if you look at the Bhagavad Gita as a portion of the story of the Mahabharata, the story portion of the Bhagavad Gita is really simple. And that is, Arjuna isn't sure if he should fight or run away from the battlefield, and then Sri Krishna has to convince him to stay on the battlefield and fight. That's the story portion of the Bhagavad Gita, that little bit of the huge story told by the Mahabharata. So Sri Krishna has said again and again in earlier chapters, therefore Arjuna, uttishta, stand up and fight. He says that in a number of ways, in a number of places. But notice how he concludes. He doesn't conclude with stand up and fight. This is so significant. When Krishna said stand up and fight, he was saying that as Arjuna's friend. But he's speaking these words as Arjuna's guru, as his teacher. And this is something I learned from my guru. A real teacher doesn't tell you what to do. A real teacher teaches you what to do. And a real teacher then won't manipulate you. Please reflect on that. Any spiritual figure who is trying to manipulate their followers, there's a problem. A real teacher, a real guru, like Sri Krishna here, is non-directive, non-manipulative. You teach and then set the students free. And if the students have understood properly, they'll do all the right things. And if the students have not understood properly, the guru needs to do more work. That's what it comes down to. So please reflect, and Puja Swami Dayananda was very adamant about this point. And he was also extremely non-directive in his role as a guru. He wouldn't tell you what to do. In fact, whatever you ask him, if you ask him, Swamiji, should I do this? Yes. Should I do that? Yes. I had this thought, Swamiji, should I jump off a bridge? Why not? The point I'm making is he was that non-directive. He trusted in the power of his teachings to lead his students to do the right thing. And you can clearly hear that, you see this in Sri Krishna's comment here. Arjuna, reflect on this entirely, then go and do whatever you want. Of course, there's a little joke coming, you'll see in the last few verses, where Arjuna says, okay, I've thought it over, and I've decided I'm going to do what you want me to do. So you'll see that in a few verses. Okay, final verses, which are really very, very beautiful. Together? Be devoted and worship me, offer sacrifice unto me, then you shall surely come to me. This I promise, for you are dear. Abandon every other goal and seek refuge in me alone. I shall release you from all sin. Be not sorrowful, do not grieve. Arjuna, have you listened now? With a completely focused mind, has your ignorance been destroyed? Has your confusion been removed? Arjuna said, O Krishna, by your holy grace, my confusion has been destroyed, and my composure has restored. As you command, so shall I do. And there's a joke. Do whatever you want. And Arjuna says, okay, I'll do whatever you tell me to. Very, very appropriate. By the way, this is also a good strategy for dealing with adult children. Instead of being directive, parents could take an example of Sri Krishna, and instead of being directive, teach them, give them life lessons instead of being directive. Now, remember that this is a story within a story, within a story, within a story. There are actually 4 levels. So we now pop out one level to the next higher level, which is a dialogue between the blind king Dhritarashtra and his charioteer Sanjaya, who has his divya drishti, the ability to see and hear everything happening on the battlefield. And Sanjaya has been narrating this whole thing to the blind king Dhritarashtra, and Sanjaya's words conclude the Bhagavad Gita. We'll see that now. Sanjaya said, "Thus I heard this great dialogue of Lord Krishna and Arjuna. This secret yoga I did hear directly from the Lord himself. O king, as I recall once more that remarkable dialogue, I am astonished and amazed. I rejoice again and again, where Krishna, Lord of Yoga, is with the great archer Arjuna. There his glory, victory, wealth, and most certainly righteousness." And that brings the Bhagavad Gita to a close. Nice to, you get the idea of the value of this English translation. In a very simple way, we can get the overview of the teachings. And that overview is very powerful. When we're going through verse by verse in Sanskrit, what do they say? You can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. That's a problem when you're looking. Of course, we need that detailed instruction that we get from the original text. But then we also need to have the big picture in mind, so to speak. And that's the value of these English verses and this review. So we conclude our whole study of the Bhagavad Gita, and we do have a few minutes left. So we will conclude with the second half of the Gita Dhyanam. We recited the first half at the beginning of the class, so we can recite the second half right now. Okay. Again, listen and repeat, and as I'm chanting, please read the translation. Bhishma Drona Tatha Jayadratha Jala, Bhishma Drona Tatha Jayadratha Jala, Gandhara Nilotpala, Gandhara Nilotpala, Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani, Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani, Karnena Vela Kula, Karnena Vela Kula, Ashwattama Vikarna Ghora Makara, Ashwattama Vikarna Ghora Makara, Duryodhana Vartani, Duryodhana Vartani, Sotirna Kalu Pandavara Nadi, Sotirna Kalu Pandavara Nadi, Kaivartaka Keshavaha, Kaivartaka Keshavaha, Parasharyavachasarojamamalam, Parasharyavachasarojamamalam, Gitartha Gandhotkatam, Gitartha Gandhotkatam, Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikatha, Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikatha, Sambodhana Bodhitam, Sambodhana Bodhitam, Loke Sajjana Shadpararaha, Loke Sajjana Shadpararaha, Pepiyamanam Muda, Pepiyamanam Muda, Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Karimala, Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimara, Pradvansina Shreyase, Pradvansina Shreyase, Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam, Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam, Pangum langhayate girim, Pangum langhayate girim, Yat kripatamaham vande, Yat kripatamaham vande, Paramananda madhavam, Paramananda Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha, Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Maruta Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi, Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi, Vedai Sangha Parakramopanishadar, Vedai Sangha Parakramopanishadar, Gayantiyam samaga, Gayantiyam samaga, Dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa, Dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa, Pashyantiyam yogino, Pashyantiyam yogino, Yasyantam navidusura suragana, Yasyantam navidusura suraga, Devaya tasmai namaha, Devaya tasmai namaha. Beautiful verse to conclude with. Let me just make one concluding comment, an important comment. And that is, as much as I'm looking forward to beginning our study of Bhagavad Gita in next week's class, it's really, really important to say that continued study of the Bhagavad Gita is not optional. I say the same thing about meditation. Daily meditation is not optional in spiritual life. I think we can also legitimately say that ongoing study of the Bhagavad Gita is not optional in spiritual life. Don't let the book hide out on your bookshelf. Take that book, put it on your desk. Better yet, there's a chair where you sit for daily meditation. You do meditate every day, I know. So on the chair where you sit for daily meditation, put the Bhagavad Gita next to it. And every day when you sit down to meditate, read several verses. That's all you need to do. Just read several verses that will maintain your connection with this wonderful text, wonderful resource. Otherwise, if you lose connection, what good does it do if the book sits on your bookshelf and all that you've learned here in the last 2.5 years remain as memories? Doesn't help you at all. So maintain your connection to the Bhagavad Gita and daily study. Just a few verses is the best way to do that. Okay, some closing announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have the Upadesha Sahasri, the text of Sri Shankaracharya, which has now just resumed. We've just begun the chapter. So it's a good time to join the class if you haven't already. So please come and join us tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And then satsang will be at 11. So immediately after the class, question answer satsang. And then every Wednesday at 6 p.m., Vasanti conducts an online class on Sanskrit grammar. You can join her online class. And we will conclude with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspataha Nashranvan Uttabasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.